welcome to the Library Kitchen. I'm Tom, and today I'm going to make something pretty good. Great. They're called kofte, and normally a kofte is served as a meatball or as a kebab or even a meatloaf. But today I'm going to make Kafta Sliders, and that's K-O-F-T-E, kofte. It is a Middle Eastern, Central Asian dish. As you know, we know kebabs from Turkey and the Middle East, and that's pretty much what it is. But I've just modified them and enhanced the recipe a little bit for my taste. So this is my take on Kafta sliders. And instead of using our normal burger type condiments, I'm going to make a white sauce, Tom's white sauce, that's not unlike tzatziki or hadari, which are either tzatziki is a Greek sauce and hadari is a Central Asian, Middle Eastern sauce, to complement and put on to lubricate the kofte burger. So with no further ado, today I have, because of the limitations of our facilities, I have pre-cooked some, but I'm going to show you the mix, and I've also prepared the things that need to be prepared. So I'm just going to run down the list for the kofte first. And kofte's predominant flavor is mint. And along with mint, it gets parsley and onion. So those I chopped up earlier. And then all of this phalanx of seasonings go in it as well. Now, I mentioned mint. I'm also going to be using dried mint as well. It helps augment the flavor, and I like the combination. And at this time of year, of course, I have fresh and dried mint available to me. If you want to use all dried mint, not an issue. But mint is the #1 spice in this particular production. So today I've got approximately a little less than a pound of 85-15 burger. And I want to make a comment about the burger itself. You can use leaner burger, but it won't garner the flavor as quickly or as in such depth. You need some fat in there to translate all of these flavors together to give it, for them A, to meld, and B, give it the depth we want out of it. So I believe the recipe that we're going to post says you need 1.5 pounds. I use what I have and I adjust my proportions accordingly. I'm not at all a slave. So it's really straightforward. We've got our meat. We're going to take our onion, plop. Let's see, we're going to take our parsley, in it goes. In goes our mint. And then we just start down the row. So a little bit of dried mint. And in essence, that's the wrong side. In essence, we're looking for similar proportions, but I tend to be heavier on the mint because it is really a wonderful flavor. Now we're getting into the seasonings that require less. So we get, let's see, we're going to start with some garlic. We need a tablespoon of garlic, and it needs to be minced, chopped, crushed, however you get it, so it will incorporate well. We need salt and pepper. Well, I generally don't use salt. I think the last time I did a presentation, I like to substitute sumac for salt. And it works very well here because it is a very aromatic salt, if you will. So that's its teaspoon of sumac. And we're moving on from the sumac. We got the garlic out of the way. We're going to take a look at cumin. We need a teaspoon or so of cumin. Oh, my cumin's got lumps in it. I wanted everything to distribute very completely when we do the mixing. So a little bit of cumin. And then we jump on, I like a little bit of onion powder. You do not have to use onion powder. I want about a ½ teaspoon of onion powder just to bring out the onion flavor a little bit. We get approximately a teaspoon of coriander. Remember, coriander is the same thing as cilantro, although this is the seed that's ground as opposed to the leaves. Let's see, we need some, we're going to leave the cayenne for last. We need some allspice, approximately a ½ teaspoon of allspice. And you do have to be careful with these seasonings. You put in too much, they're going to take over, and it's not going to be fun at all. We need some cayenne. And this is really for flavor, not for heat. So that gets approximately 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. And if you want to add a little bit of heat and a nice amendment, some pepper works very nicely too, about another 1/2 teaspoon. So the final ingredient before we mash this all together is breadcrumbs. Panko is what I use, but breadcrumbs are breadcrumbs at the end of the day. Panko are a little bit harder. In this particular iteration, they're a little, oh, excuse me, these are Panko breadcrumbs. I'm using a very coarse variety. Now, if you use the very finest breadcrumbs, they sort of give it a rather uniform texture, not the same mouthfeel, if you will. So I think it's important to use a fairly coarse grit of Panko or breadcrumbs. And I think it calls for 1/2 cup, might be a whole cup. In essence, it's acting as a filler and a flavor transfer. So you don't have to be shy with it. You don't have to go wild with it. So the next thing we do is we incorporate it, and this is where we get our hands dirty. So in goes a hand, and I usually take the meat and stir it around, try and get it coated. And as I do it, you can see I just work it all the way around, and you really have to squish it between your fingers to get everything to go into the middle. That's what's really important here. So here we go. Now I always mix the kofte up first because it wants to marinate for 10 or 15 minutes at a minimum. If you want to make it ahead, perfectly acceptable. It will keep in the refrigerator as long as the meat will keep. None of the seasonings would go bad before the meat goes bad. Be mindful of the fact it's not going to be pink meat after 1/2 an hour or so. It tends to turn a gray-green, and that is the parsley and the mint infusing it with its goodness. And you end up with a really delicious thing. But you really want to, well, make a fist, if you will. Gush it through your fingers. It's like playing with Play-Doh when you were a kid. Particularly when your mom got upset because you put all 4 colors that you had into one ball and mashed it all together, and guess what color it was? It was brown. Well, this turns sort of gray-green, not brown, so it's a little better. Your mom won't be so upset, and particularly if you make it for her, it'll be really good. So once I feel comfortable with the mix, maybe you want to take a quick shot of this. I take it and I form it up in the bottom of my pan, all together in a nice bundle so everything is together. And there you go. You can see it's still nice and pink now. Chances are by the time we get done and take a peek at it, it will have begun the change. And it is what it is. It's good taste. So I need to take a break now. Gotta wash my hand, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. My hands are clean, and now we can make another mess. So this one's another assembly thing. The one thing I had to spend a little bit of time on was de-seeding and mincing up a good-sized cucumber. Not the end of the world if you don't get it small. This again is texture. Most of the recipes say you should have it in a small mince, but that's just not as good as this. I like it about like this. It's a medium-sized mince. It feels good in your mouth, and it certainly transports the flavors well. Another thing I do is the moment I get done mincing it, it's spread out on the cutting board, and there's a picture. I always sprinkle a little bit of salt, like 1/8 of a teaspoon to 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, depending on how much cucumber there is. What happens when I do that is it sweats water out of it. Now I'm making a sauce, and I want it to be somewhat dry. Obviously it's a wet sauce, but what I mean is I want it to be a little stiffer. And too much cucumber juice makes it a little bit too saucy. So here we go. In goes the cucumber. This is the primary element, and it is just a plain old cucumber. Okay, into the bowl it goes. Let's see, here's this. Alrighty. Then we need a cup of sour cream, a cup of mayonnaise, and a cup of yogurt. Oh, I didn't realize. I thought this was an open thing. Well, there we go. So again, this is my idea of a cup. Now we'll get that taken care of. Okay, yogurt and mayonnaise. I'm going to reuse a spoon. There we go. Now this yogurt needs a little stir. You can actually not worry about stirring it if you want to, again, have a really stiff sauce. Not really that important at the end of the day. Okay, that's about a cup of yogurt. And we'll scrape it off again, waste not, want not. And then we'll give it some of the mayonnaise. And mayonnaise is always a personal thing. You want a relatively medium sweet mayonnaise. Not too sweet, and certainly be careful if you're making homemade. You can make it really dull. It needs to have just that little bit of fun in it. Okay. So now we've got all of the low-fat components in it. And we're going to give it the rest of its seasoning. So we're going to use a little bit of white wine vinegar. This will give it just that little bit of balance, a little acid. So it wants a teaspoon to a tablespoon. That was probably about a teaspoon and a half, about half a tablespoon. Sumac again in place of salt for me. You can just use salt if you don't like or have sumac, no big deal. That was about a teaspoon of sumac. And we need about a quarter teaspoon at the most of cayenne pepper. There we go. Just a little bit of heat. So this is pretty easy to take care of. The next thing is we incorporate it all together. In other words, we stir it. Now this is going to be about the consistency of ketchup. And that's important. Okay. See how it came out. That's really pretty tasty. That's really good. I'm going to give it just a slight shot more of the vinegar and another shot of the sumac. There we go. And it doesn't have quite enough of a bite, so we're going to give it just a touch more cayenne. Because we're making 3 cups at the end of the day. We need enough. And, you know, I can't taste the kofte as it's being made because it has raw meat in it. But this, with a spoon, you can taste as you go along. Oh, that's just right. So this is ready. It can sit. You can use it immediately, whatever suits you well. We're going to put it up there. So next, through the magic of time lapse, no, not through that, I have some pre-cooked kofte, and I'm going to set up to assemble the burgers. All right, here we are, put together and ready to go. So we've gotten to the build it part. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take these burgers and put them on these buns and slather the lid with some of that white sauce and serve it to whomever. In fact, I need a plate on which to put them. Do you have a plate? And look, we have a plate. Ready to go. Here we go. So, straightforward situation. I'm going to set the plate over here for right now so we can assemble en masse on our board. So you can use any variety of bun you want. I happen to like slider buns. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go. And arranging them easily for quick operation and assembly is advantageous. Here we go. Okay. So you can do it in any order you want. You can put the burgers down first, like so. I need to know where the bun bottoms are so I don't butter the bottoms first. And by the way, you can put as much of this wonderful sauce on as you please. It just happens to be extremely easy to do it just like that. And whoosh, right over, oriented correctly. Whoosh. I know the sound effects add to the experience for me. Try not to make too big a mess. You see, and you can see it's a very light sauce, not unlike a ketchup, but it doesn't have enough vinegar to mimic ketchup, nor does it have any tomato in it. It has a cucumber. It's a white sauce. It is also not a tzatziki or an adari, because it's not all, the dairy isn't all yogurt. I like a moderated sort of thing. My mother used to always mix mayonnaise and sour cream together, and when I grew up and tried it with yogurt, it's fantastic for me. All right, and there you have it. 8 yummy Kafta sliders. And man, these things are good. I'm sure that these won't last long at all. The recipe I gather is going to be posted alongside this, so have fun. It's not mandatory to have every single one of those seasons, and if you like another flavor that works well, consider using that also. Experimentation is the soul of cooking, any way you look at it. Thanks so much for having me in your home, and I hope you enjoy these yourself. Take care.